Good morning, everyone. I'm Julie Livingston, the president of Want Leverage Communications, the public relations and thought leadership consultancy. And I'm delighted to be back for another edition of PR Patter, my semi-weekly podcast where I talk to other thought leaders who work in the marketing and communications field. And today, if you like what you see, please go visit my website, leverage.com, or connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to get to know you. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Steve Markman to the podcast. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you, Julie.
And Steve has more than 3 decades of experience in the speaker and conference field. And since founding Markman Speaker Management in 1994, he's helped over 1,000 leaders from all walks of life obtain speaking engagements globally. He's worked with businesses of all sizes, from solo practitioners to the Fortune 500, including IBM, PayPal, Subaru, Bank of America, Hitachi, and Ogilvy PR worldwide, as well as dozens of professional service firms, including Ropes and Gray and Booz Hamilton. In addition to his executive visibility speaking service, Steve conducts customized workshops in which he coaches people how to create an effective action plan to secure speaking engagements as a strategy to grow their business. Additionally, his firm has a speakers bureau division that provides keynote speakers to associations and corporations. Prior to launching his business, Steve headed up the conference divisions of leading organizations such as the Conference Board, Comdex, and BIS Strategic Services before it was acquired by Forrester Research. So great to have you, Steve.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Could you let's start off by explaining the difference between the public and private speaking sectors, because I know you work in both.
Sure. So there are many different reasons why people want to speak, and one of them is income. And a lot of people are under the mistaken notion that you wake up one morning and you go, well, why should I do something for free? Because I have 25 years of knowledge, and they hear about somebody like Malcolm Gladwell getting $75,000, $100,000 to speak, and they go, well, I don't need that. I'll be happy with $20,000, right? So the truth of the matter is the vast majority of speaking engagements out there are unpaid, and the ones that are paid are what I call in the private sector, meaning companies. So companies will bring in a subject matter expert to talk to their HR folks or marketing folks, whatever the case may be, or just a motivational speaker. So those speakers actually use public speaking, or whatever you want to call it, but speaking as a source of income. That is absolutely the number one reason why they are speaking, is to make money from it. Now, that's a relatively small number in the greater scheme of things. And even if you want to do that, it's very tough to break in. It's not easy. It's more the established, someone's written 3 or 4 books. They've spoken for several years, and then they can name their price and go into.
Right, they're a radio or TV personality that has
exactly.
a dedicated audience.
Either they're a subject matter expert with renown, or there's, like as you just mentioned, someone with what I call the star quality. The most prevalent type of speaking engagement is in the public sector, and by that I define that as public conferences, right? So if IBM has a conference, no one's invited except the IBM people, and sometimes they may have some clients and so forth. But in the case of a public conference, it's a open to the public conference, usually open to the media as well, and except for the keynote speaker, who they many times will set aside money for, again, for an author or someone who has an instantly recognizable name. Everybody else doesn't get paid to speak, but the benefit is huge, and that is those speakers are mostly executives. Those are the people I mostly work with. They're executives, they're principals of companies, be it consulting firms, law firms, financial services firms, and it could be someone who, as you mentioned before, I work with solo practitioners all the way up to the CEO of IBM and everything in between.
That's great. Why do you think public speaking and thought leadership is so critical? I mean, we're in a tough economic environment right now. There's a lot of uncertainty, and I have found that business has been very, very tough. Why should people focus on this particular thing?
Right. Well, because it is tough. And this is an opportunity to get out there and demonstrate expertise, right? So when there is a bona fide recession, as we know, it being in this business, marketing and PR is the first to get cut. And then every time that happens, there are 41 articles written about you shouldn't do that because that's the time not to cut.
You think
your
people
marketing.
would have learned by now?
Yeah, right. Don't cut marketing. Don't go, into a cave, because then when the recession is out, when it's over, nobody remembers you. So you have to always be getting out there, whether it's some kind of a thought leadership through writing articles, whether it's speaking. But Julie, I feel that speaking is the most direct route. And I've been running my business now for 31 years. I've been in the field for another few years before that, been on both sides of the business, the conference director side, the production side, as well as the representing the speakers, as I've done for these 30 years. And what never changes is the benefit to being in front of an audience, directly talking to them so they know your expertise. So it's demonstrating expertise in whatever subject matter you are. You're a subject matter expert. It's thought leadership. It's demonstrating credibility. So if you're at a conference and you're speaking to, whether it's 30 people in a small Zoom meeting or 5,000 people at a big IT conference, you're already establishing credibility. And of course, with the magic of the internet, before you even hit the stage, everybody knows everything about you, except your underwear size. And I'm not sure that that's not coming soon too with AI.
Right, exactly.
Right. But that's what's great about speaking, because people can find out about you and maybe they didn't know about you. So if you're IBM, everybody knows IBM. But if you're a smaller company or mid-sized company, and you want to get your name out there, especially if you're in a very competitive field like AI or pretty much anything in IT nowadays, this is an opportunity to be out there and speak about what you know. And you're not doing a sales pitch. You're demonstrating expertise through giving information that people can take back to their companies. And if you develop a business development lead out of it, great. And quite frankly, call a duck, right? That is why you're doing it, because thought leadership in itself is not in a vacuum. Thought leadership is because you do hope that in the totality of your PR and marketing and business development, that you will develop some relationships with people that could be a customer or a client at some point. And I think speaking does that.
And then there's all the after promotion too, because now if your talk was videotaped, you have the right to, parse that out online. That's tremendous. That's of tremendous value.
Yeah, the shelf life of speaking
Yeah.
is amazing, and the ability to do things remotely. Now, I'm writing an article now about that, about how it has Zoom and other remote platforms have basically revolutionized the speaking business and really revolutionized it, in that there are so many more opportunities. So if somebody say they want to start their own consulting business, or they are a consultant and they want to use speaking as a way to show what they know and their knowledge so that they can attract clients for their mainstream business, which is consulting in this case.
Sure.
It's a great way to do it without costing a nickel. I mean, all you have to do is do what we're doing here, right? You get on a Zoom and you do a 45-minute or 1 hour presentation to the New York chapter of the American Marketing Association, just for example. And you didn't have to go out of your house. You didn't have to go on a plane. So the time and expense reduction is of huge value and makes it even easier.
No, absolutely. How can public speaking contribute to building organizational trust and credibility? I think that's another thing. Those are two things that are very important today as well.
Right. I think the main way to do that is through the content, right? So by not giving a sales pitch, which a lot of people do, and they say they're not going to, but they get up on the stage and they do. I have a big cane and some can of
I mean,
tomatoes that I
that is
throw at
just the
people.
worst thing you could possibly do because
It's the death knell of a speaker,
it
especially. It's
is.
just and they don't, and a lot of people, they think they can do it in a subtle way, but it comes back to haunt them. But by not doing it, the absence of that establishes credibility and trust. And if the person has enough experience in knowing that they don't need to do that, and in giving really good knowledge, imparting knowledge that people could really use, that's establishing trust. So it's not theoretical. It's practical information, tips, things that, even if it's just a few nuggets that someone can go back to their office, one of the audience members, and then they come back to understand what the company does, and that establishes trust for sure.
Right. It should not be a sales pitch at all.
Exactly.
Yeah. So tell me, I'd love to hear some stories about some of the people that you place for speaking opportunities. Particularly, you had mentioned something in the AI space, because I think that is coming up for a lot of people these days, and how AI is affecting public relations, marketing, and speaking.
Right, exactly. So in the last 10 minutes or so since we started discussing this speaking topic, there were 12 AI conferences born. It's amazing. They're popping up everywhere, which is good for people who have that expertise. So, for example, I have a client, EXL. They're a $2 billion IT, AI, and data company, and they've grown very, very rapidly. They're only about 27, 26 years old, so they went from zero to 2 billion. And I just this week got a keynote slot for one of their senior executives. So that's an example of how that company can now be in front of people who may not have heard of EXL because they don't have necessarily the name brand as the other companies, and so you have to really try everything, is what I tell people, that companies have the opportunities now to go out there and not to be afraid that you're going to be rejected, because it's sort of like it's part sales, right? So whether you hire somebody to do this for you, or you have someone like you or me in PR who's helping get these speaking engagements, or you do it internally, it's an effort, and it's sort of like sales, because you get turned down more than you get accepted. Hundreds of people are applying for these speaking engagements, and there may only be 15 or 20 slots in a conference. So it's very competitive, in spite of the fact that people say, one of the greatest fears is public speaking that people have. There's a lot of people out there that want to speak, and there's a lot of competition from among these companies that want to have this platform. So it's important to be proactive, to try to get out there and pitch the conference and we can get into that, but there are different ways that conferences choose their speakers, but it's important to know what those methods are.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love for you to elaborate on that a little bit, because I think there are people who they want to speak, they want to get out there in the public fora, but they're not really sure how they fit in.
Right. So basically, there's the formal and the what I call the formal and the informal. So the formal is most large national conferences like this conference that I mentioned, this AI conference. They hold all of these big conferences. Primarily hold a call for speakers or call for papers, usually, or call for presentations. Goes by different names, but basically it's a call. It's sort of like asking for a company for an RFP, and you're actually submitting a proposal through an online application, and so you have to be ready to have all the elements that go into that proposal. And then there's other, and I'll talk about those elements in a minute, but the other way is what I call the informal, which is if it's a regional or local chapter of an industry association, which, by the way, the association market, which is most of the public conferences, are done by trade groups, associations, occasionally some conference companies. They're in the business of putting on conferences, but they're primarily the association market, and they hold conferences for members and non-members alike, usually an annual conference and then two or three others during the year. And a lot of them have chapters, right? So to use the example I mentioned before, the American Marketing Association. So if you're a CMO of a company or you're a marketing consultant and you want to pitch the New York chapter of the AMA, they may have a call for speakers, but more than likely they have a programming committee, and that committee is comprised of anywhere from 2 to 5 people, and you just have to find out. Not always easy to find out, but it takes some sort of detective and digging to find out who is the head of the programming for that chapter of that association. And then if it's Mary, then you send an email to Mary and you start the process. You develop a working relationship. And then Mary says, send me a proposal by email. So whether it's that sort of informal or through the call for speakers, you still have to have always the main elements. And the main elements are, first and foremost, a presentation description, which we call an abstract. Goes back to the academic days when that's when the public speaking field actually started, with professors speaking in the 30s and 40s. That's how the word abstract started, because it was at academic and scientific places that used the word abstract, but we still call it an abstract in the speaker business. So it's basically 2 paragraphs with some bullets and takeaways. And I spent a lot of time with my clients developing that. It's like your 15 seconds of fame.
It's got to be really tight, and it's got to be really exciting,
right?
Without being promotional.
Correct, exactly, Julie. Great title. Has to be an enticing title, because the gatekeeper, these programming people, you don't get past the gatekeeper if you have a dull title. They're not even going to read it. They're very busy. Most of them are understaffed and underpaid, and they don't have time to start going back to somebody and say, well, can you spice this up a little bit? And they get so many proposals that there's no shortage of people for them to be able to choose from. So that's really key. I parse every single word, no sales pitch, but also make sure that it's hard hitting, maybe a little bit different than all the other topics or descriptions on a similar topic. So that's first and foremost. The second thing, which a lot of people think is the most important thing, and it's not, is the bio. They look more at the title of someone. So, someone who's an analyst at a company or a junior manager type of thing is very unlikely to get chosen to speak at a conference or even a small event. So they're looking for the management levels, people who are directors, VPs, C-level. speakers especially from a company, or if you have your own business, you've got a lot of experience. And the key thing in the bio is showing your experience in your field, right? So if
So
you're
not necessarily as a speaker, but
exactly.
okay.
So unlike the paid part of the business where they want to know, okay, well, if I'm paying Joe $15,000, where have you spoken, and give me 14 testimonials, and you got it's more of a sell because they're taking a financial risk in you, and they have a choice of many people. Whereas in an unpaid uh, engagement, in a situation where you're at the um, trying to get people to bring you into a business conference, which mostly we're dealing with business conferences, but that goes for medical conferences. It goes for, any field in health. I've
Yeah.
done work in healthcare and other fields too. Regardless of what it is, how long you have been in that job, not for even for that company, but in that type of job, in that career, that's more important. If you have 20 years or 15 years in a career, and you're talking about a topic that reflects that, that is going to give you a lot of credibility. And they don't even ask, well, where have you spoken in the past? Probably
Interesting.
more than 25% of the time. I'd say I just submitted something for the Society for Human Resource Management for a client of mine who is speaking to HR audiences, and they oftentimes want to know, tell me the last 2 or 3 speaking engagements that you have,
Okay.
just to
Right.
give them a better feel for, you're not trying them out for the first time, and which can happen. A lot of people have been in a business or a career for 15 or 20 years, and they decide one day now they want to start speaking, and they hadn't done that before. That usually happens when they go out on their own and they realize that they need to get out there and speak in order to attract business. So that's important. And then testimonials, once you start getting started, from people who have either heard you speak or actually with even more credibility, because you can then give them attribution, is the organizer. So that's important. So if I say, someone spoke for you, Julie Livingston, CEO of PR, et cetera, said this with a quote, and you've given permission for that. That adds a lot to it, and that sometimes can really be helpful. And then people ask me, do you need a video? And the answer is, for the paid site, absolutely. You'll never get hired without a video. But if you have one and you're an executive and you've had someone in your staff record you, that also can be helpful.
That's
it can be
great.
hurtful also.
If you're not good enough, right?
Right. And so someone might say, but they're really not, what they're looking for is the content, that abstract. And if you can say that you've done some speaking, even if you haven't, it's okay. It doesn't mean you shouldn't try. Yes, run before you can. You have to walk before you can run. But you can give testimonials and other ways to demonstrate that you are a good speaker. So they don't want someone to put people to sleep, because if you have great information and then everyone in the first row is sound asleep, that's no good either.
No.
But they're more concerned, and I would say only 10% of the time is a video even requested for a public conference that's run by an association. It's not that common, but it's good to have one ready if they do.
What do you think some of the mistakes are that people make when preparing to give a talk or a presentation at a conference, let's say?
Okay, I'll give you the number one mistake. And it's 1, 2, and 3. It's a 3-way tie because it's the same answer. Bad slides. People don't think about that.
Interesting.
They overwhelm themselves with worry. Am I saying enough? Am I doing enough? And they put up a slide that takes about 2 minutes to read. And think about that. If you cannot go 2 minutes per slide, or you'll be in a 4-hour speech, right? Because if you have 20 slides, it's
Oh
just not
my
going to
God.
work. So what happens is they put very busy slides, too much information, and besides the fact that it's not enough time for people to read, the speaker doesn't realize how distracting it is because they're reading, right? They're
Right.
reading.
They're
They're not
not
listening.
necessarily listening.
They're not listening to you. They've stopped listening to you. And I know that because I'll see, especially in a Zoom, and you can see the questions being asked. The questions are, some of the questions the speaker covered already, but the person wasn't listening because they were reading the slides. So busy slides bad, sales pitch slides bad, because you may not say my company is really great and we've done this and we've done this and our clients love us. Yet you can't do any of that, but they may implicitly do it in a slide, right? Or they think that they can give a demonstration, of a software that they have, which is also a sales pitch. So they have to be more careful about that. I would say that's the number one mistake. And then the other mistake is just not practicing. So, I don't want to, we've been talking about how to get past the gatekeeper, but once you get accepted, you want to be invited to other people. And with the magic of social media, you could be ripped on, LinkedIn or, someplace else real quick. If you do a sales pitch, but also if you were really bad, if you're a really bad speaker, you're not going to get a testimonial. And so you're not going to come back. And it looks bad for the company, right? Because you're representing
Sure.
not only you, but this is an effort for corporate and personal branding. So you have the corporate brand at stake. So the answer to that is practice, 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 practice. It's
So that it
how
kind
do
of
you
rolls
get
off your tongue so that you're not looking down at a script as that much, or
right,
you're
or
making eye
forgetting
contact with the
words.
audience.
Correct. You've got to be able to be polished enough, even if the elocution may not be as good as a professional speaker, but you want to say things that are accurate, that you meant to say. You don't want to forget things. So that practice is really important.
Yeah, no, I can see that. I've definitely been in the audience for presentations or talks where, I'm sort of like, snoozing off because the speaker wasn't well versed in what they were talking about. They were either they were very nervous.
Right. And actually, that's a good point that you just, I should mention, Julie, that you triggered in my head, which is stick to the description. Because another mistake people make is they send in the description, and then after 3 minutes, they're off talking about something else. And you're thinking, and I've seen this, I've seen it happen a lot.
Oh my,
And,
yeah.
and talk about false advertising. You don't want to do that. That's another way to lose credibility.
Wow. Wow. Well, Steve, this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for joining me. And how can people reach you?
Yeah, so they can reach me at my website, which is scrolling on the bottom, markmanspeaker.com. If they go to my website, they can fill out a contact form if they want to reach me, or they can simply email me. My email is on there as well. They can go to LinkedIn, and I'm happy to chat with anybody. No obligation, just to have a phone conversation to see if I can be of help to them.
Thanks again so much. And everyone, if you like what you saw, please go to wantleverage.com, check out my website, and let's talk about your thought leadership strategy. I'll see you again next time on PR Patter.